guitar fam and friends, what's going on? Welcome to episode 2 of the Improv Loop, where we're going to talk about just the basics of how to use a looper, because if you can't get a loop or a chord programmed in to play over in time and make it sound good without being, terribly frustrating, then it's going to be kind of hard to get through all the stuff we're doing here. But again, you don't have to have a looper to go through these lessons in the future. We're going to have the jam tracks available for you whenever we have a specific example that's applicable. But I know when I first started trying to use a looper, it was really weird, and the coordination was kind of tough to get down. So I wanted to give you some tips that helped me be able to loop a little bit. And I'm by no means a good or a professional looper at all. I'm just talking about the basics of getting a chord progression in time in the looper. If you want to get a little more in depth into looping, I know Paul Davids has a really good course out on how to do like multi-layered, really cool looping stuff. So check that out once you get the basics down. All right, let's get into these tips that have helped me use a looper a little bit better, and hopefully will help you as well. The first tip I have is to use a metronome when you're first starting out, because using a looper is probably going to expose some timing areas or timing issues that you have in your playing that you need to kind of correct or work on. And that's a really good thing about looping. You're not only going to be working on improvising and stuff like that, but your timing will get a lot better too. So I always use a metronome if it's something that matters, like if I'm doing filming, or if it's just a more longer chord progression or a more complex chord progression that I really want to have just be really in time. Because if you put in a loop and it's kind of out of time or it's drifting, it's going to be a nightmare to improvise to and play to. Tip number 2 kind of flows directly from tip number 1, and that is to count yourself off or start playing before you even start the looper pedal. So if you have your metronome, count yourself off 2, 3, 4 to get in the groove. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start playing before you even step on the looper pedal. I'm just going to play G major with quarter notes, all downstrokes. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can kick the looper in. That'll make sure you're in time and everything's in place and ready to go. Now, tip number 3 is to have your foot ready above the looper pedal, above the button, before you even need it. You don't want to have it over here waiting. You have to pick it up and slam it down, right? Every microsecond counts when you're trying to make a loop that's in time, and then it sounds good and feels good to play over. So all those things over. Count yourself off, use a metronome. 2, 3, 4, 1. Play before you need it. Get your foot in place. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now, if you listen, I hit that 1 harder just to give me kind of an idea of where I am in the loop, and that's a 2-measure loop. That's a 2-measure loop that's just a G major chord over and over again. And that's all you have to do. That's really all you have to shoot for when you're starting out. It's just a 1 or 2-measure loop with 1 chord. That way you can get used to hitting the start and stop button, recording a good loop, and keeping your playing in time while you're doing it. Now, eventually, you're probably not going to want that accent in there. And the way most loopers function, all you have to do is hit it once to start recording, hit it again to stop recording, hit it twice to stop playback. You can hit it again to start playback again, twice to stop, and then if you want to erase what you just did, just hold it down. So those are the main things that have helped me get to where I can just program a couple chords into a looper and then jam along to them. Another couple tips I have for you are to just start out with 1 chord. Don't worry about doing a long chord progression. Just try to do 1 or 2 measures in time like this. So metronome on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Start playing before, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Just something like that, something that simple, and then you can play over top of it. So something like that is good to shoot for. Another thing to think about is if you're using more than 1 chord to play over, you may want to think about giving each chord a little bit more time so you can really think about what you're doing as you're improvising. So instead of, let's say you have a G to a C progression you're working on, instead of giving each chord just 2 beats or 1 measure, you might want to give it 2 measures or 4 measures. So let's do that with a G and a C chord. Just do 2 measures each. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, C. Okay. And that gives me plenty of time to think, shift my mind from playing a G major to a C major. That's something that'll help a lot too. It'll keep you from being discouraged. We'll get into how to play over chords more later in this series, but that's a little tip to help you kind of slow things down so you don't feel like the train is just running away. So start incorporating this a little bit into your daily practice time, just getting used to starting and stopping the looper and playing in time. If you're anything like me, you're probably going to feel like you're just terrible at this when you first start out for the first week or two. But like anything else on the guitar, keep at it, and after 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to start to notice a big improvement to where you actually have something that you can play over and jam over. After a while, you're going to get pretty good at it. So your assignment for this lesson, if you have a looper, is to just program in one chord in time, either 1 or 2 measures. Either way is fine. It could be more, it could be 4 measures, but keeping it to a certain amount of measures is going to enable you to build the skills to start and stop the looper at will really quickly. So something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And that's it. Then you have something to jam over. And then it gives you something to play over in context, so you're not just kind of hopefully playing around the G major pentatonic or something and hoping for the best, but be able to hear how those notes in a G major pentatonic, for example, function over that G major chord. And again, you don't have to have a looper pedal to follow along with this series, but if you do, make sure you get the basics of this down to where you can, just quickly start and stop a loop and have it be in time. Even if it's just a simple chord for now, that's more than enough. Now, in the next episode of this series, you're going to hate me, I promise, but it's an important lesson. So if you have any questions about how to use the basics of a looper, leave them in the comments below, or email us support@guitarfam.com, or better yet, go to guitarfam.com and create your complimentary account. Don't forget, every Guitar Fam member gets 1 complimentary video lesson with me, so you can schedule that on the site too. See you later.